Hey everybody, how y'all doing? This is Alvin J. Brown, aka Mr. iSnap Studios, and right now I have with me Mr. Craig Samuels. Go ahead and say hello to everybody.
How's everybody doing?
Alright, in case y'all don't know, Craig Samuels, he's an author, a mentor, a writing coach, a lecturer, and an organizer. Craig has aimed to speak about the issues that goes on in the human psyche that predominantly resides in the communities, hitting home to where an individual perception and outlook on life starts at home and what he or she has been exposed to. With this book, My Mother's Guilt, My Father's Sins, The Death of Innocence, he shares his story growing up in a rough upbringing with his parents and the journey of self-recovery, with hopes to inspire everyone to press forward to battle their inner demons and find peace within themselves. Now, is there anything you want to add on to it? Anything you want to let people know about yourself or the book in particular?
Well, actually, I think we'll cover everything in the question, the Q&A period. So once we get started with that, then I can go ahead and let the listeners, the viewers, exactly what we're here for. So no.
Okay. All right. Okay, that knocks that out of the way. So let's go ahead with this first question, which is, what inspired you to write this book? Did you have to go ahead and relive any of your previous experiences as you wrote each chapter in this book?
Absolutely. I relived it. I was living it, every day of my life. Growing and seeing the different aspects of growing pains and the causes of those growing pains. And you can only come to a place of healing when you acknowledge that there's some healing that needs to be done. So you have to acknowledge those wounds and recognize where the wounds came from. We're talking about cause and effect, and I knew what the cause was. Well, I knew what the effect was, but hadn't really analyzed the cause. And once I started analyzing the causes, then I began to understand me more, and why I was the way I was, confused in some areas. And then, of course, as a young man growing up, without a father after, my parents divorced, you don't have that voice. You don't have that outlet, to another man where you can, express yourself and get manly advice, to apply, to those areas. And, so what happens is, for me, you feed those insecurities, those dysfunctions, the uncertainties, no self-esteem, lack of confidence, all that. I mean, all of that was me. And when you want to go along to get along, you create an image, unlike yourself, to fit in, to be validated, by those who you want in the group that you want to fit in with. So that's pretty much what I did, and I explain that in depth, in detail in my book. What caused me to write the book is what I just got through saying. Everything that I just shared. I thought once I got from under that weight, and I began to see clearly, and I had some clarity of who I am and who I was not, and realized that, I'm just one person. And there are tens of thousands out there who are having the same issue and may not know how to get out, what to do, what steps to take. So I figured, transparency is the only way that you can help someone. I can't help you if I act like I've never been through anything. And so I was willing to be transparent and become vulnerable, in writing this book and letting people in that part of my life that helped shape who I am today. So everything that is a negative, or seemingly a negative, is not always a negative. It could be a positivity shrouded in negativity. Mm-hmm. And once we realize that, sometimes, not sometimes, but when resilience kicks in, and then you begin to put forth, the efforts to escape a false reality. And so that's why I wrote My Mother's Guilt, My Father's Sin, The Death of Innocence. The death of innocence was the death of the innocence of a child. And here we are right now today, discussing it. So that's why I wrote the book, and that's why I do, what I do. and aim to do more.
All right. All right. And with that being said, that inspired you to go ahead and become a mentor. And why don't you go ahead and get us more in depth with what pushed you to mentor those who may have or did have those traumatizing experiences growing up in the households?
Yeah, well, not having my father around, not having that strong male figure around is what was the primary inspiration. When my father was around, it was not a good thing. So you pick up, I picked up the things that I shouldn't have picked up as a young boy, seeing things I shouldn't have been exposed to. And I didn't want that, when I became a father. I didn't want that for, my child. I'm a father of one, a daughter, and grandfather of 4 boys. And I want them, to be exposed to, those experiences either. And then outside of my family, there are other young boys out there who went through what I went through. And now some of them are men, and they have these, what I call secret thoughts of the subconscious, where they suppress their hurt, their pain, and disappointment. And they lock those pains and the disappointments, the things that we could say are traumatic experiences and and dysfunctions, because as men, a lot of us, the machismo, won't allow them to say I'm hurt in this area. Won't allow them to say that I need some help. I need some counseling. This is bothering me today, and this is the reason why. Because in the mind of men, some men, it doesn't apply to all, admitting those things is somehow in their mind belittling and decreases their manhood, which is not so. Because just because you're a man doesn't mean you don't feel. So I wanted to encourage brothers out there that it's okay. When you hurt, and that hurt is real, and be a voice to those who doesn't have a voice. Be a listening ear to those who didn't have a listening ear. And be an example more than just spouting off, good advice, but be the advice, be the example of the advice that I'm giving, so they can have a Craig Samuels or whoever else is in this particular area of this field to call when things get a little rough, and so that's why I do it. I want to see young men, women too. I want to see young men grow to be strong men. From there's something that there's a part of my book I talk about. Males are born and men are developed. We come into this world as males, but it's going to take another man to show you how to become a man. And this is what I'm aspiring to do. This is to show the young brothers out here who don't have that male figure, a father, or stepfather, or whoever it is. If that presence is absent, then who do they go to? So I make myself available as much as I can to, if nothing else, be a listening ear to those young men. And the young ladies too. Ladies, I'm not leaving you out. Because we all need it. Even right now, we to some capacity, we all need a little help. We've all come through some trying times, and the only way to live this life holistically is to be healthy. Mind first. So that's why I do what I do.
All right. Yeah, and to vouch for that, I actually did go on ABC 12, and that's the main topic that I brought up when it comes to if people want to deal with being in a relationship. You have to have that. You have to have your right state of mind. You have to be mentally healthy first before bringing that up.
Right.
Because if you go in there and you haven't dealt with none of the issues, none of the inner demons that reside in you, you're actually going to end up bringing that hurt to somebody else, and they're going to end up carrying that hurt.
Well, the old saying goes, hurt people hurt people. And if you're injured, then you're going to injure someone else. It's inevitable. And so until we can get to a place of healing, healing lasts for a lifetime. Counseling deals with the immediate issue. Not saying that counseling isn't necessary, it is. But they're two different things. Counseling will help me get through the next day, maybe the month. May help me get through the year, depending on the longevity of the counseling, the consistency of the counseling. Whereas healing, you're talking about getting deep down inside to what caused the pain to begin with. It's like going into surgery. If you have a cancer, I can give you medication to help the pain subside. That's short term. If I want healing, which is going to give me longevity of life, then there has to be a surgical procedure. You have to get to the root of the cause of the pain, the root to the cause of the issue. And many of us, especially in the black community, we sweep those issues under the rug because they're taboo. We've been brought up in a society, especially, again, and I'm not bashing black people. I'm not bashing it at all. This is a real issue that has gone unaddressed for far too long. So what we do is we sweep a lot of those things under the rug that we don't want to address. But those are the things that are hurting us. That young girl out there, and she's promiscuous, but first thing we want to do is call her out of her name. And we don't know why she's promiscuous. We don't know what went on at home, or what caused her to behave in such a loose manner. Or that young boy who's angry, always angry. We don't know why he's angry. We don't know why he behaves the way that he behaves. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what he has to go home to, or what she has to go home to, or what they come out of. And so those issues have been taught to us. What goes on in this house stays in this house. Yes, to a certain degree. But when what's going on in the house is not conducive to the atmosphere you need to thrive in, then something has to happen. Because pretty soon, like not taking out your garbage in a timely manner, it begins to stink up the house. And if you don't remove the garbage, the stink begins to show up outside of the house. And that's an example of the behavior of these children. Why do they do what they do? Some of the adults, why do they do what they do? So we never look at the why, we always focus on the what. The what is the surface, the why is the cause. And those are the questions we need to start asking.
Yes, that is very, very true, and that's pretty much how the healing process can start taking place.
Absolutely. So it is a journey that we must never give up. We must remain on the path to healing. Our families, many of our families are broken due to the specter of time past still lurking in the minds of many of our parents. Many of our parents have issues from yesterday that were never resolved. There was no intervention. There was no therapy. There was no counseling. No type of psychiatric help to help them deal with the emotional breakdowns and pitfalls that they've experienced en route to becoming parents. And so what happens is you have multi-generational dysfunction and trauma. Well, what is that? Well, my hurt and pain and dysfunction and trauma and everything else that I've experienced is passed down to you. Now here I am, or you, or whoever it is. Now I have become the recipient of the weight of the idiosyncrasies of what's the term I'm looking for? Of issues as it relates to our parents that have not been addressed, unaddressed. That's the term I'm looking for, unaddressed. So now we become victims in a battle that didn't have anything to do with us. There's a term called epigenetics, and that is, and it's a gene situation, and it deals with genetic memory, emotions, things of that nature. Well, it's simply a passing down of an altered behavior. Be alcoholism, promiscuity, things of that nature, drug abuse, things of that nature. And so that's what we suffer from. That's just a scientific term for it, but many of us suffer from that. And what I just called it was multi-generational dysfunction and trauma. But another scientific term for it is epigenetics. So, and it's necessary. And if you look around our city, you see it.
Mm-hmm.
If you pay close enough attention, you see it. And that's why, again, why I do what I do, and trying to get others to stand with me as well. You know, and be courageous enough to say that I have this problem. Otherwise, you live your life with these problems, and they show up in relationships. They show up in your job. They show up, you know, in whatever it is that you're doing, and that creates a domino effect of failed relationships, especially from an intimate perspective. Because you have issues that have not been addressed. You have wounds that are still open. There's been no surgical procedure starting here. And the beginning of that process is admittance.
Mm-hmm. All right. And with that, I'm just going to end up asking you one last question. And that is, what's your intake of the community at large as we face the issues that surrounds us? Like, what are the causes for some of the things that goes on that in the community as a whole?
In the community as a whole, I would say one of the causes, preoccupation. Where we are with the whole Flint water crisis, the closing of the schools, gentrification being in full effect. Just my opinion, it came from being preoccupied with things that were not of a significant nature. We were too busy. When I say we, I'm talking about our parents and our grandparents. We're too busy, and there's nothing wrong with what I'm getting ready to say, but it needs to be said. Too busy focusing on when General Motors was clicking on all cylinders. We're too busy focusing on what GM had to offer. Mm-hmm. We're too busy, I got to get this house, I got to get this car, I got to take this trip. And those things are important to a degree because we do need shelter, we do need jobs to be able to pay the bills. We need those things, but General Motors and everything that goes with that became our focal point, and we lost sight of what was going on in the community as a whole. Too busy to show up to city council meetings to find out what's going on. Mm-hmm. Too busy, caught up in our own world and what we deemed important to show up to the parent-teacher conferences. Mm-hmm. Too busy to include everything else that's going on in the community aside from GM. Yes, have your jobs. We need them. But at the same time, you have people who don't have your best interests, see what's going on. They see the weakness of the people, and they see what's going on, and they come in and they run for these seats, these offices. They get the positions, and these positions that they get, they now have the authority to make the decisions that governs your livelihood. Now, their agenda is in full effect, and the monster has gotten too strong for you to stop it overnight. And that's because we were too preoccupied, with what we thought was important. And so here we are now. We have the school closings. I mean, it's evident. You can drive down any neighborhood in the city. You don't have to take my word for it. Go see for yourself. But those who live in Flint, I'm sure I'm not saying anything they don't already know. Mm-hmm. So a comeback is necessary. But we have to, in order to arrive to a solution, you have to address the problem and be honest about where the ball was dropped. Pick the ball up from that point on and learn how to organize again. It's something that we fail miserably at. Organizing and staying organized and trusting one another, because this is our community. I grew up here. My mother grew up here. My grandparents came here and bought a house back in '48. my grandsons go to the schools here. I went to the schools here. My daughter went to the schools here. So, you know, we have generational wealth, if you will. And I don't mean from a monetary perspective. I mean from a legacy perspective. You know, and so with that being said, that's what I think and what I see now. You know, it's not so much as what I think, it's what I know because I see it. You know, it's fact based on observation. We have to be careful of who we put in office. We have to be careful of these pseudo leaders who are who have ulterior motives. You know, they don't have the best interest of the city. It's about personal gain. We also have to be mindful of the pastors as well. We can't talk about this without talking about the church element. You know, and this doesn't apply to all the pastors. There are a few out here who are they have the boots on the ground.
That's actually like really stepping their foot out and actually trying to like help out the community, actually be a voice for the community.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying it's not a blanketed statement. It doesn't apply to everyone. If you're out here doing what you're supposed to do as a public servant, then I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the ones who would further exploit an already exploited people because you have a personal agenda.
Yeah, and in my professional line, one of my coworkers, they actually had just experienced the fact that the pastors that they talked with were mostly all pastors that was actually about the community, and they was trying to like get connected with the pastors, all the pastors in the community. But you have pastors that just don't want to be around others because whatever like personal issues, whatever personal stigma they might have, and that can cause like an issue as well because they might not come to terms as far as like where the best interest at a community or whatever the case may be is.
Absolutely, and that speaks to division. The appetite of division is insatiable. It can never be satisfied, and that's one of the problems that we have as a people. You know, I'm just speaking for locally here. You know, you have religion. And then you have the different reformations, and they're all talking about one God. You know, I don't want to make this into a religious situation, but let's just look at this. But you're divided amongst yourselves in the same city. You know, and that's a lot of. I think a lot of that has to do with man's insatiable desire to want to be right, and people want to be right. And if they feel they're right and whoever it is that they need to link up with are wrong, then they just simply won't do it. So now you have sections all over the city. You have little pods all over the city. You have cliques all over the city. You know, I won't deal with you and we won't deal with you and we don't like the way they look and how they believe or what they believe, so we won't do. And that's not just in the religious sector.
It's broader than that.
It's broader than that. You know, it's the political sector as well. So we're talking about the total aspect of what we're talking about. Division is one of the main issues. I will call it a disease, the disease of division. And once we get that under wraps and understand that brothers and sisters here in this community, we all trying to do something to achieve a common goal. We all have something on our plate on a daily basis, whether it's job, and especially those of us who are parents. You know, you got a job to go to. You have children to take care of. You have maybe you belong to certain groups in the city where you're trying to do your part in the community. You know, we have to recognize those things, and just because we're in different groups doesn't mean that we can't come together to work as a unified. It was like I like to say a viable proactive entity. You know, we can have the Alvin J. Brown section over here and the Craig Samuel section over here, but we also know that there isn't a divider there, that when we need to come together, we can come together.
And it's actually very true. Me and my media pals, we actually put that in practice, where we all have our own business. We all got to move about our media in our own way, but when we come together as a collective, and people can see that, and they're actually being more receptive to that. So I can actually say that that's actually something that can work, but it has to. But from this point on, it would actually have to be something that everybody has to be on board with to see about if you want to make a community better. You actually have to understand the vision is not the answer for that.
Right. Well, the first thing first, as far as coming together, I've heard it say, been said so many times that unity, we need unity, we need unity. Yes, but not first. Unity will serve as a structure. What we need is the foundation of trust. Because I'm not going to enter into a business venture with you if you don't trust me, if I don't trust you. You're not going to do business with me if you don't trust me. And so, with that being said, trust has to be the foundation to which we build upon. And when we begin to put the structure in place, that structure will be unity based on trust. Our base is trust. And I won't have to worry about what my brother or sister is doing or not doing because we trust each other and we know that we are in this together for the long haul to, again, achieve a common goal. You know, we have to set up boundaries for one another, hold each other accountable. It's nothing short of what our ancestors did in the 60s. I don't need to go further back than that. Just look at the civil rights movement and what they did to hold each other up and hold each other accountable and not let the negative things or those things that are perceived as negativity and in opposition prevent them from moving forward. We can do that again. The blueprint has been laid. The handwriting is on the wall and it's been there. If we just pay attention and stop being so egotistical and self-righteous and judgmental of one another and selfish. You know, if we set those things aside and really look at one another and value each other, then I believe we can get to the place that people call the promised land. I've heard it been said, call the promised land, and it's not out of our reach. If we just value each other enough to come together and be brothers and sisters. If I am my brother's keeper, then I don't have to tell you. I'll just keep my brother, you know, and show him the love and show him the respect and lift him up. Be that life preserver, you know, for him, and then he for me, and the sisters likewise. Because we can't do this. It's not a male-female thing. This is a people thing, a collective. And I, for one, am of the mindset of that it ain't over till we win.
All right.
Yeah.
And that actually pretty much wraps this up. This is like one of the most insightful, and this is one of the ones that should be like talked about more often to be able to actually like start moving forward. So I thank you and appreciate you for your time to coming out and being able to like be a voice.
Absolutely, man. Now, this is what has to be done. We have to step up and let our voices be heard, and those who will agree with what I'm saying and what others have been saying of the same nature, stand up with us, you know, and so we can get this thing done. You know? When it's all said and done, and when they put me in the ground, I want my life to have meant something, to account for something, to have affected rather, and impacted. Even if it's just one, at least that person will have a memory of Craig Samuels, you know, and saying, "Hey, he was there for me. He made a difference in my life, and I want to make a difference in the lives of other people."
All right, and that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks a lot for your time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.